Well, platform clearly, in there right now with products that are going to do private clouds to the extent that they're practical now, and they've got technology that is applicable to how people are dealing with HPC workflow in the cloud now. Azure, I get that there's a lot of announcements around that, but with the whole technical computing initiative for Microsoft, that's maybe more of a long-term outlook in terms of the effect they're going to have.
It is, and so I don't have enough news to kind of hold on to and say this is the big story. But again, at SC that might change, and we might have a lot more news on that front. The striking omission from this show is Univa. I'm not sure why they weren't here, but I was kind of looking forward to sort of doing a comparison between some of these companies. So hopefully I'll see them at SC or ISC''Cloud, or we'll see.
So you got Univa in your no-show kind of disappointment category.
But I'm surprised, again, that there were this many companies that had something cloud-ish or virtualization-ish to offer that's sort of directly related to the space I cover.
So Addison, we just talked about the winners, and Nicole just talked about her disappointment category. What was your big disappointment? Who would you pick as maybe the loser of this show?
Well, coming at it from a loser standpoint, I don't know if it's a loser as much as someone who's getting beat by people who are having good shows. I'm going to go back to who I had a year ago at this same show with AMD. AMD was here and they had their solutions, but Intel had a great show and NVIDIA had a great show, and AMD didn't have a great show. They're kind of in there, but there's a lot of news around Intel, and there's a lot of news around NVIDIA, and the big conversation that everyone's asking me as an analyst is, what do I think of Intel versus NVIDIA? And if the conversation has gotten around to what I think of Intel versus NVIDIA, and everyone's forgotten about AMD, then to me, AMD is not having a great show, and I'm looking forward to hearing what AMD can do to kind of break out of it. And I did have a conversation with AMD, and I think they've got a lot of interesting stuff to say, and I think it's going underappreciated right now. So, in terms of what AMD can do to break out, I think that's an opportunity for them. But, in terms of what the scuttlebutt is around the show and what people are talking about, having all the conversation be around Intel and NVIDIA, I think, is a big loss for AMD.
Yeah, I gotta think that's a kind of a good pick for a disappointment. I mean, they did have a booth. I know I'm going to talk to them after the show about some other topics, but yeah, it seems a little odd that they didn't think this was a platform for them to talk more about what they're doing in HPC. I mean, they're committed to it. They've got plenty of customers and OEMs interested in their products. So yeah, it's a little strange they didn't do a little bit more.
Conversely, in terms of who surprised me, I didn't get my chance to do a winner on the other side. A company that did more than I was expecting them to do was T Platforms. I felt like T Platforms had a really positive showing relative to what the expectations were around that company. They had a great announcement with Rusnano that kind of teed them up coming in. They had a good booth presence, and as I got into more and more conversations with people in HPC about what the trends were, I was asked a surprising number of times about what we thought about T Platforms and what their role was. I think they're really forward-looking in terms of the eventual road to HPC as a service. I think they're establishing themselves as a really viable presence very quickly in HPC, or a viable and incredible presence in HPC, and felt like they had a lot that was interesting to say.
Yeah, that's a good pick. I mean, I remember them from last year, just 12 months ago. They had this small booth. There were like, a handful of people there, and I remember writing about them, but it seems like they thought themselves as a minor player. They were going to be in Russia, obviously, in the Russian states, the former Russian or USSR states, and maybe in Europe. Now there's 3 times as many people here. They just opened an office in Hanover. They're putting out all kinds of news about installations. I mean, I would give them, if not the winner, I'd give them most improved of the year.
Well, that's kind of my point in terms of how much improvement. Don't get me wrong; they're still a minor player, right? If you look at the overall total output of Bull versus T Platforms, Bull is still this established player. in Europe, but in terms of maybe overreaching what the expectation was coming into this show, I thought T-Platforms really hit it out of the park.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
They seem to me like innovators, and I actually talked to them about HPC as a service, and while they were a little reluctant to talk to me because they were afraid they didn't have this kind of defined marketing strategy to kind of present to me, the informal conversations I had with a couple of them were really insightful. So I'm almost looking to them for maybe in a year from now, having some big news in our space.
Well, Michael, Nicole, and I both got to give our one-up and our one-down. We didn't get to your loser category. Is there anyone who, they're not a loser, but they disappoint you at this show?
Yeah, there was. And I guess I sort of predicted it last week when I was talking about Oracle and what they would be doing at this show. And as it turns out, not a whole heck of a lot. I mean, they, Mark Hamilton from Oracle showed up on the hot seat panel, and you got to give him brownie points for that.
Yeah, Mark was here.
Yeah, he was here.
What did he say?
Not much. I mean, he kind of skirted everything. There was sort of a lot of hand waving about, how great Oracle is and what they're doing, and basically said we're still kind of trying to figure out HPC and what we want to do with it. Maybe we want to call it Oracle Technical Computing, and there was some talk about, going after the missing middle. So, which if you read between the lines a little bit, makes me think they're not going after the high end of the market anymore. But they're not even doing that at this point. There's very little news, or there's basically no news about what they've done or what they're up to. And if you go to the booth, which I did, and try and talk to them about, what their strategy is, they won't talk to you. It's a quiet period, I guess, so they won't do that. But
I think their quiet period starts around April 1st and then ends March 31st, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems to. I don't know what this is for exactly, but yeah, it was sort of incredible. If you're going to come to a show and have a booth and have it manned by a dozen people and then say, no, we're not going to talk to you.
I think the booth was paid for already coming into it, and they wouldn't have had it otherwise.
Yeah, but still, it's like, that's a strange thing to do. I've never seen that happen in any other show I've been in, just not talk to the press and say, we can't talk to you about what we're doing, and expect to get any sort of respect. So it was a disappointment. I was hoping to learn something about their strategy, and I came away thinking, I don't know anything more about Oracle's strategy in HPC than I did a week ago. So
well, we're talking about who had good shows and who had bad shows. How about you in particular? HPCwire, HPCinthecloud, did you have a good show?
It was a great show. There is still a lot of growth in my space, obviously. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. But I look forward to kind of coming back next year and sort of comparing and seeing what sort of movement there is just in the space of 12 months. Right. So.
Yeah, and I had a great show. I love coming to this show. It's just the right size for this domain. It's not too big. It's not too small. You get a lot of good conversations with people. The vendors that are really committed to the space come for sure. So you get to talk to them, and I had good content during the show. A lot of good, nice interviews and articles. I think I'm going to have some coming out of the show. So I really like coming to Hamburg. It's a great city. Everything about this place is nice, and I hope they continue to do this for years and years.
Well, you both produced a lot of content for your publications, Intersect 360 Research. We had a great show also. Chris Willard and I were both here. We had a fun reception on Monday afternoon that a lot of people came to. We got to debut our newly redesigned website with a lot of research online. We got to announce our user modeling and simulation leadership panel that we're introducing our people to. And most importantly, it's a chance to touch base with a lot of people across the community. I agree, it's a nice size show. So fun for us as well. It's always great to see you and Nicole as well. It's fun to do these podcasts together. We're usually in all different cities. So congratulations on an awesome show, guys.
Congratulations, everyone.
And we'll put a wraps on Hamburg, and if not beforehand, we'll see you for Supercomputing 2010 in New Orleans.
All right, sounds good. We'll be here before you know it.
Thanks a lot, everybody, and that's it from ISC'10 for HPCwire Soundbite.
Cheers.
Cheers.